Hello and welcome to the ISL Podcast. Today we have a special podcast. We have Stephanie, who is a physio from Team Toronto Titans, and she's also a sports therapist and does kinesiology. And from the Tokyo Frog Kings, we have Sharon Fullin. Hello, Sharon. She is also a physio. Stephanie, Sharon, thank you so much for making it for this podcast. It means a lot to us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Yes, thanks so much.
Sort of to start things off, could you tell me a little bit about your sort of mental process, mental state going into the ISL season 2020? Because there were so many things in motion. There was the COVID, of course. I know that the athletes weren't sure if the ISL was going to even happen at all. Tell me about your concerns. Did you have them? Were you considering coming or not? And when were you sold that ISL is going to happen? I feel safe. I'm going to go. Stephanie, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, it was pretty amazing to see the whole thing kind of happen and evolve with the bubble and the plan that was being put ahead by the ISL, which I thought was a very well thought out plan, and where it was and the isolation and the creation of the bubble. I think my concern was at the beginning, like how much PPE stuff I would have to bring to protect the athletes and myself and everybody around us. I think that was the first and foremost, was the health of the athletes. And I think we did an amazing job, and you guys, ISL, did an amazing job of keeping everything sanitized and everything well cleaned before and after events and at the hotel service. So I think a lot of my worries disappeared when I got there and saw everything in motion, because we got there a bit late than everybody else. So I think by then, when we got there about a week, 9 days later, everything was smooth sailing. So
got it. Thank you. And you were concerned before coming, like, is it going to be clean enough? Are the athletes going to be safe? Are you going to be safe?
I think I went overboard in bringing my own sanitizer, my own cleaning, my own table, shields, masks. I brought more than ample enough of stuff. I think more the concern, I think, was because I know we could keep our area clean as professionals. It was the whole getting in the traffic and the transit in the airports and things like that. So just took a little bit of extra precaution on those things, with the N95 masks, being able to travel with those, and making sure everything was sanitized in and around your seat in the airport. Just things like that you just had to take an extra step. But like I said, in the meetings before, you guys all talked about how much was going to be provided, and just being in communication was a huge thing with the doctors and you guys and everything, and getting things organized on that regards.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Sharon, what about you? Did you have any concerns before coming to the ISL bubble? Is it going to be safe? Are you going to be safe? Any concerns at all, or were you sold on the idea straight from the beginning?
I was not worried because in my mind, even before arriving in the bubble, I thought that if ISL is going to do that and is going to be able to do that in this world pandemic condition, it means that they are all the rules done. If everything is settled in the right way and following all the rules that the World Health Organization has suggested. So I was definitely quite relaxed with that. And also I really I was curious to see, like Steph, how was that happening during the day. So every step of the athlete's day, how would it be managed? And it was a perfect realization, and we saw it from the results, and it was completely safe. I had the opportunity to travel before ISL, and I've taken different flights before that experience. So I already was experiencing how was flying during this period. It was not relaxing as usual, of course, but as I already experienced it, it was perfect for me. It was really fine. All the travel and all the staying also.
Makes sense. Thank you, Sharon. Stephanie, Sharon, there is one critique that existed before we launched ISL that professional coaches, athletes, and fans believed would be a flaw of the ISL. This is that the competition is too dense. There's too many meets in too short of a frame of time, and the athletes might not have enough time to recover, and their performances would deteriorate. And B, it is also a potential higher risk to get an injury because of the amount of times the athletes have to perform in the ISL format. Yet this did not seem to be the case during this ISL. Athletes not only progressed during the season with their results, they ended up breaking world records by the end of it. And I believe huge kudos goes to you guys. Helping the athletes recover in between the meets and in between races is hugely important. But could you please say a couple of words in terms of working with the athletes and their recovery? How is ISL different from a typical swim meet? Because ISL has the competition is so much denser and there's so much more going on. Could you please open up on what are the challenges for you as physiotherapists or sports massagist? Could you open up a little bit about that? Stephanie, you want to start?
Sure. I think it was really interesting to see, because this was my first year on the ISL, comparatively speaking to many of the other meets I've been on. And so the condensed 2-hour program, like the format, yes, it was quick between races, but they had, sometimes they only had a little bit of time to warm down, but their body would still stay active and warm. It would be more of a recovery active state between races if it was really close, and having that extra little tank there really close to the comp pool was able the athletes to stay close in communication with the comp pool, knowing what time they had to get back in for, say, a next race, or they had time to come back, get a shakeout, swim out, which was generally the case in most swim meets. But with the 2-hour and not being able to, not coming back for heats and finals, we had more actually time to address any situations, address any injuries or tightness of the muscles after the race, or even before the race, and doing a pre-warm-up or pre-activation, depending on what time the ISL had us set at what time in the day. So we'd have more time to do pre-warm-ups, activation at the hotel or earlier at the pool, or after the pool session, being able to have the ice baths, have the flush outs, or any dealing with any injuries at that time as well. So and the days in between were actually pretty good too, to be able to have the swimmers swim out as well. So I think it was good all in all. There was some hard times. We were back to back on a couple of races there. I think it was 2 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 2 days off kind of thing for us. But I think that like you said, the athletes are used to swimming quite a few days a week, and they're pretty intense, some of the sessions in the pool. So I feel that they were already just so grateful to be there, and it just built up with all the excitement around racing, around watching the races. And so that level of excitement also brings up the level of performance in an athlete as well, on top of some more psychological with the physiological stuff that we do. So
Thank you, Stephanie. And would you compare at all the ISL to sort of how would I say this? a very intense training camp for the swimmers rather than a swim meet, because it seems to me that the strain on the body would be building up from meet to meet, and by the end they'll be pretty broken down. Or was this not the case for you?
Do you want me to respond?
Yeah.
Or share? Sorry. So I felt that, like, yes, the intensity, it's like a 2-hour practice, whereas a swim meet generally tends to be quite a few hours over a couple of days. Our Olympic trials tends to be 7 days. So this for Canada. And so even at the Olympics, you have a 9-day swim meet, essentially, or 7 or 9. And so, yeah, usually there is a prolonged intensity. But with the ISL, it was those 2 hours, and then we were able to get back on it right away and stay ahead of the game on preventative prehab, I call it, preventative measures to ensure the athletes can continue to perform over and over and over again. So
Makes sense. Thank you, Stephanie. And Sharon, what about you? How would you compare the ISL in terms of working with the athletes to a normal swim meet?
I think that as for me, it was the first ISL season also, but I think that for everybody, it was the first experience taken for so long time because of the bubble, sanitary bubble situation. And that has for sure good, good ways, good fields that allowed all the professionals and the athletes to focus properly only on the work and on the schedule. Also, Tokyo for Kings had a very strict schedule, and some days, some weeks, they also have 2 days of racing and 2 days of rest. But I think that also the thing that ISL is very, very different is that it's a whole team which is competing. And hopefully the whole team should have some strategies to be able to give the perfect formation every time, even if the timing are so strict as for some teams it was. For all the teams, but for some it was a little more. Another positive thing of this year edition of this season, I think it was the wish to race, because every swimmer was so thirsty of racing that 6 weeks intensive work. So it was, yes, training camp, but also the first time of the year they could race in an international situation. So it was they were very prepared mentally for that. So I think it was very, very good. The only thing I can say, it was not very practical for us as therapists, is that in the bubble we could bring all the stuff we wanted for work, so all our tools, but it's not the same as working in our practice where we have our setting. That is the only little thing, but for me it was not a problem, because I had a fantastic team who had all the professional working together and always updating on the athletes work. I was attending also the gym part of course, and the contrary, the trainer and the coach asked me about my work with the athletes. So it was very, very precious as an experience.
Okay. And the point of view of a physio gets taken into account when developing a team strategy, as you said? So would the coaches come up to you and say, how is this athlete feeling? Like, is his body broken down? Does he have more in him? Do the coaches do that kind of stuff, Sharon, Stephanie?
Yes, they do. Steph, I don't know how is in your experience, but luckily they do.
Yeah,
Luckily.
yeah. They it's a nice communication. I knew quite a few of the coaches and got to know the other ones, and so that the communication bond is really important, to be able to feel comfortable enough to discuss something with the coaches, and for them to be able to take it in and apply if need be on certain occasions. So that's huge. So I was pretty fortunate to have an amazing team to go with. So
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie, Sharon. And we're actually receiving a question from the fans, and it holds: is it possible to be too loose before the race, and where is the borderline for you? Sharon, do you want to start?
Yes, it's an interesting question, but I think that at that level of athlete professionals, the athlete has the sensitivity to understand how much he needs to be loosened. As Stephanie said before, swimmers are used to swim every day and to do different kind of physical work, so they know the loads that their body can afford, both in terms of weight and in terms of lackness, of softness. I don't know if I can be understand.
Okay, it makes sense. But you, as a physio, Sharon,
Mm-hmm.
do you sort of have borders for yourself, like when you go over an athlete, like, okay, he's getting too relaxed in a way, or every athlete is completely different, and some like it when they're absolutely loose and free and relaxed, some like it when they're very tense. How much individuality is involved into it?
In my opinion, I think it's totally individual, because I repeat that they are professional and they have complete staff around them, and in the specific performance request, there is the coach which knows them by the training times and can tell them this point of view. Because from my point of view as a physio, I can only say if the structure is in a good state, if it is in a healthy state, and if he can perform like he used to, or he can perform even better. And we also need to evaluate, of course, the risks. But this is a work that we do a lot before the race. So during ISL, this kind of collaboration was possible, but also necessary with all the staff of the team because of the strict times and the schedules.
Thank you, Sharon. And Stephanie, what about you? Do you think it's possible to be too loose before the race, and is there sort of a borderline for you, or do you agree with Sharon? It's completely individual.
I actually agree with Sharon. Like, at these levels of sporting events with these high pro athletes, they know how their body works, and they've been to multiple swim meets before, that are long periods of time and intense as well. And so each athlete knows how their body responds well, what each individual or individual coach and athlete have plans already going into this. And so, like Sharon said, being able to have that support from the coach and the athlete, and knowing their body and how their body responds. I have some athletes that like to be a little bit more engaged, the muscles, and I have others that need to be able to. I think the whole thing is about feeling the water, and in each individual athlete has that feeling themselves of how they feel in the water. So
Thank you, Stephanie. And Sharon, Stephanie, both of you mentioned how important it is to sort of listen to the athlete and account for his individuality. And that brings me to my next point. In my experience, the role of a physio on a team is not just limited to working with the physical side of the athlete, but also working with the mentality of the athlete and being sort of the team psychologist in a way. Would you agree to this? Do you do this kind of thing? And if so, could you open up about it? Like how important it is for the athlete to have a person to talk to like that when they're relaxed and they have nothing to worry about? Stephanie, do you want to start?
sure. Yeah, I have had that before, and I fully agree on. I'm not saying that I am certified in any mental, but to be able to have an athlete.
Hey, Stephanie, you disappeared a little bit. Sorry, I think you're good. No? No, sound disappeared for some reason. We can't quite hear you. Sharon, do you want to pick up?
Yes, of course. Maybe we can have Stephanie back later, and I would continue what she was saying, because it was the same. It is the same for me, not only with athletes, but also with non-professional athlete sports. We, of course, have to deal with the whole person. As one teacher of one of the very first courses I attended, he said, it's not like when you bring your car to the mechanical, that you just leave it, he fix it, and then you go and pick it up. It's not like that. It's not that the patient comes to me and gives me his column and tell me, okay, this is my column. I go for an hour and then I pick it up, and I take the whole person. And some people can realize that I am not there for psychological part, but it depends. Some people are more aware of it, some other are not. In general, I can say that as we as professional know that point, that the person comes in the hall and they gives their trust to you in with their all essence. We take them with the maximum respect we can, and with the empathy and sympathy that we are able. And this is individual, of course, but also you can develop it by maybe studying a little more of psychological stuff, even if we are not the psychological professional. This is anyway very, very important, because when I work it for help people feeling better, and with the professional to help the professional perform better in his best way in that moment. So my role is to work with in general positivity and love. This is something that I realized after starting working and collaborating with another very, very important physiotherapist, which is very famous in swimming, which is Enzo Iodice. And I was hit by his way of working, because I know you know him, so maybe you can confirm it. He makes a bond with the athlete like he's a mate, but at the same time he stands in his position of professional for helping him or her to reach the results they need. So is this kind of collaboration that the athletes search for, the just feeling like they are welcome, and that's all, because they know that you are good at your work, because they can also feel it, because they are very, very experienced with their body.
Of course. Thank you, Sharon. And a good point you make about Enzo, and you're right. I had the opportunity and the luck to work with Enzo a little bit, and it seems like he becomes your friend before he becomes your physio almost. And I believe that's incredibly important, because when you're working with professional athletes, their body is a very sensitive topic. And sometimes it's not that easy for them to open up regarding stuff that has to do with their injuries, with their body. And it's a lot easier to do when you have the full faith in the person, and when your physio is also your friend. So I totally agree with you on this point. And Enzo is the person who does it best for sure.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Stephanie, how's your sound?
Good, I think. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. Yes. Do you want to pick up on where you ended? So,
well,
how much?
yeah. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I agree with those guys. What on you said about Sharon said, and you said about Enzo, and I didn't get too much of a chance to chat with him, but you can see how a good therapist around athletes and the enjoyment they have, that bond they have, and I fully agree with that. That an athlete body is like their temple, and they give it to you to help um, with any means that they need to do to create a better performance, and whether it's getting treatment or just even venting to you on the table, or joking about something that happened in the bubble or whatever. um, I think sometimes they need to have a different perspective, and you have a different relationship than the coach and the athlete. And you're kind of in the middle of being able to be more of an athlete's friend, because you want those funny jokes, you want those funny texts or whatever, the communication to be open and freely with each athlete and you, and they'll open up more. I want to, you know, maybe I want to know something that they don't want to tell their coach, but I can help with that. Digestive system problems. Maybe the female doesn't want to go to a male coach, or having that bond is huge, I think, for the relationship to get better and the performance to get better as well.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Sharon. And my next question is regarding the skins race. Some of the athletes prefer to have a physio work with them in between their rounds of skins race. Some of them don't like to be touched at all. Some of them like to talk to the coaches. Do you believe there's absolutely anything to be done from the point of view of the physio in between the rounds of the skins race? Or is it purely mental, like a placebo pill in a way? Sharon, do you want to start?
Well, I think that we still cannot make a rule, but as the stress of the skin race goes on, so the level goes up and the repetition of the race goes on, it sometimes it would be better to have a very quick shake, very, very quick, just to give the muscles a different stimulation. Anyway, I perfectly understand that some racers prefer not to, because in that moment they are in another level and they prefer the physical to stay in that level that they set it, and maybe work on the physical later. And that would be only a little more work for us later, maybe. And it's okay, because we really need to adapt to every single professional, as to every single person we work with. And with an athlete, to follow the example I did before, like with the car, working with such level athlete, it's like for a mechanical to work with an owner of a very, very good car, like a Ferrari, which is also a mechanical. So he is a mechanical bringing you his car, and he stays like this, watching you, what you are doing to his car. And this is the same for us working with athletes, because they are there while you're working with their body, and they have to participate in a way, in some way, not totally, because you have to have your own decision field, of course, as a professional, but they are professional also, so there must be an exchange.
Makes sense. And everyone's individual. But you believe if the person allows you to work on them in between rounds of skins race, there is benefit to be made.
Yes, I think there are, but I don't want to influence any athlete, because what I can suggest is to try to do in a way, and to try to do without. So just experiment it and try it on your skin, so you will be able to decide what to do during the race.
Let's just swim butterfly skins all day and see what works.
Exactly.
Stephanie, what about you? Do you believe there's benefit to be made in between the rounds of skins race if you work with the athlete, or is that sort of just shaking them off and sort of giving them the placebo pill in a way?
I think, like Sharon said, each individual knows that if an athlete is in the zone and feels the water, they'll tend not to get that shakeout because they have the feel of the water and they don't want that to change into the next race. And they're feeling pretty good. But also, say if somebody is still grasping for that feel, they may try to have that neurological response in the quick shakeout activating. But generally, like both you guys or Sharon said, that trying it beforehand is huge. There's many more smaller meets. There's many more practice simulations. I know that our team does those, and we'll do a couple of dive 50s. Try it then, especially being in COVID and the situation we are now. There's not as many meets to try it, so it's huge to try those at the pool practice times. Some people may like it. Some people may find it overstimulating in a race where you already are high levels of emotions and everything going on. So it comes down to personal. So
Thank you, Stephanie. We're actually receiving another question from the fans, and it holds: what do you believe are the regions of the body that are most tired after someone does butterfly, and what do you think are the most beneficial stretches for someone who does butterfly? Stephanie, you want to start?
Sure. Butterfly is huge on impact on the shoulders, of course, being able to move them at the same time. So a lot of shoulder work needs to be done in the sense of I got taught by a very amazing physiotherapist in Canada, Ron Madsen. And there's a lot of work on the glenohumeral internal rotation dysfunction, which is like basically when the shoulder sits anteriorly, which is the stroke of butterfly. So you need to make sure that the shoulder is moving properly in that joint and the muscles are still working and stretching. So pec stretches, things like that, making sure that are all moving in the same way. And also, I think in butterfly is huge is stretching the lower back because you need that hip movement to be able to create that effect to go over the water with the arms. So a lot of quad stretches and QL stretches, which is the lower back there. But I think a lot of people miss out on stretching the psoas, and which is a muscle that kind of comes from the lower back to the front. And it's huge, I think, in a lot of swim world and especially in butterfly to be able to push down. So there is the stretching and after that would be great for that kind of area. So our team is sponsored by a company called So Right, and it's actually a stretcher for the psoas muscle, which you lay on, and it stretches because it's a really hard muscle to get at. And we're just working with them to stretch out that stomach to be able to get the hips moving and the hip flexors as well. So yeah,
absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. And I totally agree with you that in a way, the lower back in general gets a little bit overlooked by swimmers, especially butterflies, in my opinion, because they think, oh, let me bend down and reach my toes and sit there for like a minute, and then boom, I covered my lower back. But in reality, it's not like that, right? There's very different angles and different muscles you have to cover. And if you miss one, that's already a opportunity for injury, right?
Yeah, it's a domino effect, I think, with so many people look at swimmers, oh, it's shoulder problems. They have shoulder problems, and they generalize that, oh, it's just, butterfly, oh, it's really hard on the shoulders. Well, yeah, if I get it, because it is, but you need to be able to, and a lot of swimmers know that and work a lot on shoulders prevention. But I think they also miss out on, like you said, that lower back issues. You talk about dives, you talk about flip turns, you talk about that underwaters. Those are all muscles that you need to work with that lower back whole kind of the whole lower girdle around the hips, and really make sure that that's moving, and in those motions to be able to get the legs forcefully pushing down in the butterfly kick. So
Thank you, Stephanie. Sharon, what would you say? Any advice to the young butterflies in terms of stretching, in terms of areas that are at most risk? Or do you agree with Stephanie mostly?
Stephanie absolutely gave a complete answer, very, very precise. And if I can only add something for the young swimmer, as you asked for, is the core work. So the work on the core muscles, like in terms of both strength and coordination and flexibility. Those are three main things that needs to be completely at high levels of recruiting, and this will prevent the swimmer from backache and neck ache, because those also are frequent in swimmers, also neck issues.
Really?
Mostly related with shoulders and dorsal issues, but I have several experiences with swimmers with neck problems, neck pain, and this is because of not perfect posture work. And this is more true the higher is the level of the practitioner. So as for every sport, the more high you go with the level, the worse your posture will get because of the training. But it's not a bad thing. It's okay this is good for the stroke, the gesture, but your body needs also to compensate and to be in balance. And in this way, you will perform even better that gesture.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
I don't want to go too technical in posture, but this is very important for me, and my athletes knows how much I care about posture balance, and usually they like the results.
Of course, and I believe Enzo has a bunch of posture tests whenever he sees you to access it, right?
He's an expert of posture evaluation, yes.
Thank you, Sharon. And one more question about butterfly, both to you, Stephanie, and Sharon, but let's address this mostly to Sharon since you started talking about the neck. There seems to be a trend in butterfly. It always existed, but it's becoming more popular now to breathe to the side. So you know what I mean when they breathe like this. Do you think that alleviates a little bit of the pressure on the neck, especially for long distance butterflies, meaning on the 200 side, that don't end up coming up as hard and need to potentially lift up their head just a slightly more? Do you think that could be the future of butterfly technique?
Oh, that's a difficult question. If I can start, but I really want to know what Stephanie thinks about this. For sure, a non-symmetric movement will give more problems in terms of posture balancing, and with all the strength which is performed in that move. So while you're finished the stroke and you turn your head, if you repeat it so many times, you can overload your neck structures. But if you do a good compensation work after the session of training and after race, you won't have problems for sure. And I can bring the example of the tennis player. The tennis player only plays with one side of the body, mostly with precise moves. But outside the field, he trains to balance all this work. So the more high is the level, the more work you have to do in the backstage to balance.
Makes sense. What about if you switch sides on every breath?
It would be better. I suggest it, but most
I haven't
swimmers,
seen anyone do that. Yeah.
exactly, they have
Yeah.
one side of preference. But what Stephanie do think about this?
Well, I feel that like completely with you, Sharon, that the rotation, the constant rotation on the one side, athletes already favor like freestyle in a sprint free, or even in a distance, or open water that I've been able to work with. All these, they all breathe to one side, and so it becomes a pattern, and it becomes like a routine motion, which then creates so many other problems. Lower back, because the one shoulder goes over, because they dip down on the one side. So I think with the butterfly as well, that constant rotation, if you have the proper um, muscles and technique, like we talked about, you Sharon talked about, you should have that strength in the lower back and the legs to be able to push them over the stroke, to be able to have their head in the proper position going ahead over the stroke, rather than over the water is what I'm talking about. And so to create that strength in the legs will help balance out like a lever system to the front. So the more power down, the more power you're going to go up and over the stroke. So I just don't see that. Some people, yes, that they love that rotation, but I think you're talking about such small little muscles and joints in the neck that that may not be able to take that load over and over in a butterfly. So I don't see it taking over as a thing. I do see some people doing it because they have a really good balance, but long-term effects, I don't know. I haven't worked with too many butterflyers, maybe one in my lifetime, that does the rotation of the stroke. So, and one of the things when I worked with him was TMJ, dysfunction. Um,
Ah.
the you're already holding your breath as a swimmer. You're already contracting the muscles, and so, and it's already such an intense event that a lot of swimmers tend to get a lot of TMJ tightness, because they're holding their breath, they're holding their jaw, and now adding that rotation, putting that more stress on other smaller joints in the head and neck, I think would be long-term effects on if this athlete continued to do it and didn't get, like Sharon said, the proper treatment after. So
Absolutely. Thank you, Stephanie. And I think you're onto something when you're talking about pressure here, and that swimmers tend to negate it. For example, if you talk about track and field sprint athletes, they actively work on relaxing their face when they run so they don't over tense these muscles. And I believe the swimmers should put this on their agenda as well. You're absolutely right. It's very important. And we actually have another question from the fans. I believe you guys already touched on this topic a little bit, but he wants to know, could you highlight in general the areas of the body that are at most at risk for a swimmer? Sharon, do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay. For sure, shoulders, but it's only because they are doing a gesture which is natural for our body, but it's very repetitive. So the repetition of of one gesture can lead to overload. So it's important to work. That's why it's important to work in balance, but not only about right and left, but also frontal and backwards, and also upper and under and below muscles. So the perfect balance you can reach with a good kinesiologic evaluation, and with a good posture evaluation. So even before there is an issue, we can see as a professional of the body, we can see if the move is done properly, or if you are probably overloading some structure going to overload. So shoulders I think this is the only part that really risks overload in swimmers. Then, as I said before, we can have neck issues and low back issues, but I've noticed them only when the swimmer doesn't work on his posture balance. So if they have a good posture, the column, the center of the body can work properly, and this is important for also the appendix, so for the limbs.
Thank you, Sharon. And probably also knees for the breaststrokers, right? It's a big thing. Stephanie, you want to pick up on that a little bit?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it kind of, I would say knees are a big thing, like each individual, depending on what stroke they do. Will kind of relate on what muscles that tend to be a little bit more tight. Breaststrokers tend to have a lot of the inner groin, the knee, the things like that, the hips that need to be opened because of the constant, like Sharon said, the repetitive strain on that joint. And also, one of the things that I've been doing a lot of work on lately for the last, I don't know, quite a few years, is also breathing. So an athlete, and so the diaphragm is a huge thing, I think, in this sport that we don't do a lot of work on because we hold our breath in this sport, whether it's underwater, whether it's a sprint, the skins, we tend to hold our breath quite a bit, and so a lot of that, I think, is looked over in treating a diaphragm or treating the whole kind of core. And Sharon touched us on this a while ago, but making sure that core is strong, but we also need it to be able to move and everything to move freely around that, which also goes into that lower back we talked about. But I think I agree with everything else Sharon said about the shoulders and neck and things like that, making sure everything is moving all properly in the right angles and stuff like that. So
Thank you, Stephanie. And I totally agree with you about the point regarding the diaphragm. I think it's a complete game changer. And actually, the person who introduced me a little more to the diaphragm training, although I was doing a little bit more already, was Enzo. And he pays quite a bit of attention to the diaphragm. And I believe has huge benefit if you're a swimmer, especially if you're a young swimmer. It's really, you can't replicate it. But with that being said, I have a couple of a little bit of individual questions, and then we'll be heading to the conclusion of the podcast. But Sharon, you ended up working for quite an extensive period with the Tokyo Frog Kings, and as a spectator, as an ex-swimmer, something about the Japanese swimmers is very special, and it's their softness in the water. They're so fluent, and their swimming is so effortless. Could you please pinpoint maybe something they do, or maybe something special about their body, I don't know, that allows them for that softness? And do you feel that softness as a physio when you work with them?
So the Japanese secrets.
Yes, please.
It was amazing to observe them during the whole day. And I can say that Japanese athletes are total athletes. I mean that even not the top star athlete of the team, all of them, there was no difference in how much they raced. Every one of them were totally in it, and were totally in carrying off their body, both in the water, but mostly outside the water. They do a lot of exercise of mobility and control, muscle control. So they are the whole day working on their body. I can say that I appreciate that tissue difference also under my hands when I work with them. For sure, you can feel the difference not only see the difference, but also feel the difference when you touch their muscles, because they take care of them in a different way, confronting with other athletes. I've seen them also taking care of their muscles with tools. And this is something that in Occidental world we are starting doing just since late. I've seen it just in a few years, but before it was strange to see a swimmer rolling on a foam roller or a massage ball or using Theragun. I come from the dance world, where the dancers take care of their body, and they go to the therapist only when they are really dying. And that's a problem for us as a therapist. But I've been used to see this, because dancers do that, take care of their body with all the tools they can, and their hands also, they massage themselves. And so do the Japanese. They have another bond with their body, which a lot of high-level professional athletes from all over the world have, but Japanese, all of them have it. All levels, all levels of athlete I've seen, they have it. For sure, I can add that they have a different approach to life in general, because it's a different culture, and they see reality in a way that in Occidental usance we don't have, or we are starting to discover now. So they consider the wholeness of the person in their culture. Maybe that's a difference I can tell you.
A bit of a tangent, but thank you, Sharon. And yeah, there you go. If you're a young swimmer and you don't have the ability to travel to Japan and pick up on some of that softness, just go to your local dance studio, right? And
Maybe.
observe what they do. And Sharon, just one more question regarding the Japanese swimmers. Do you think the diet plays a big role in the quality of their muscles? Because their diet is pretty different from the Western diet, and it seems more healthy to me.
Very, very interesting point of view. I think that every time you insert something in your body, it changes you. And if this becomes a habit, it's definitely becomes part of you. So yes, I think that diet makes difference in the composition of the tissues and in general in the health care. So it's the very base of the health and also of the performance. Athletes knows that.
Thank you, Sharon.
Okay.
And Stephanie, I believe I have the best person on my podcast to bust one of the myths that exist in swimming.
Okay.
You have a bit of a unique person on your team. His name is Andrei Govorov. Have you had the opportunity to work with him?
Yes.
Great. So in the world of swimming, and especially in the world of sports in general, when discussing swimming, there exists a notion that pure sprint doesn't exist in swimming. Even the shortest distances, for example, at 50, is a little bit more on the anaerobic mid-distance side, especially if you compare it to track and field athletes who have like a 9-second 100 dash or even a 60-meter dash. But I believe you have a person on your team, being Andrei Govorov, that challenges this concept. I believe the 50 is a pure sprint for Andrei. And I wanted to ask you, what is the state of Andrei's body after 50? Because he must have a lot of lactic acid in it, right? And a lot of people don't believe you can build up that much lactic acid in the 50. Could you open up about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I had the pleasure of working with him, and he's very interesting in the way that he comes to the pool, whether it's practice or competition. He really takes the time to activate the muscles and warms the muscles up to probably, I would say, a lot longer than most athletes I've seen in swimming do. Most of them are in the water already during practice, and he's still out doing activation for his body, and he does it also for his mind. So simulations are lying there, mental preparation as well. And I know we had he is amazing at the 50 long course, because there's no walls. So we had quite a few discussions around the walls, but he does do a lot of sprint activation and sprint simulation in his practices, which was really interesting to see, because I haven't seen I've seen that because of the pandemic, and doing simulations in practice, but not as many times as I've seen him do it. Whether, and down to the point where he puts on his bathing suit, his race suit, to simulate. And it was really interesting to see and work with his coach. I think because it was his dryland coach, and doing and watching the different techniques they do. And also after, they do special techniques of shutting down a system, which was really interesting to watch and to learn. So whether it came to the ice bath or doing a lot of lymphatic system, we did a lot of lymphatic work with him, and which was really a sprinter, because it's relieving, essentially the lymphatic system is helping with alleviate all the lactic acid buildup and stuff like that, and even taping through the lymphatic system. They do a lot of that as well, which was really interesting to see, because I've seen it before in the courses I've taken in taping, but I've never seen it actually put to work with a sprinter at that high level, and doing different formations of taping, which was really interesting as well. So it was an amazing experience to work with him. So
Thank you, Stephanie. And these simulations he's doing, as a physio, and I'm not asking you to reveal too much. If anything of this is too much, you just let me know. But working with him after his 50s, do you at all feel like he gives just a little bit more than the rest of the 50 swimmers? Because it seems like Andre has this ability to give 100% of what he has in a single 50. And it is incredibly rare in the world of swimming that someone's capable of to do so.
I would not say that he gives more than anybody else. It's just a different way that he's able to tap into his own strengths, and being able to train like that is very rare as well. To be able to just focus on a 50, which is not very common in other teams I've worked on for swimming before. So which was, I don't know too much on just of what I've known in the bubble and working with him there. So I can't say much more else of that than I know. He just takes a different approach than a lot of swimmers do, and able to tap in a little bit differently than but I would say I've seen other swimmers, that do 110%, whether it's a different event or something like that. But it's pretty interesting to see that in swimming, like you said, that 50, that soul 50. So
yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, Sharon, thank you so much. We'll soon be wrapping up the podcast, but before I let you go, there's an important question I have to ask you. What is your favorite team logo and team uniform, but you can't mention your own? Sharon, you want to start?
Well, Tokyo was so cool. I can't say, but I'd love also the colors of London Roar, because I still love green, and gold is something that makes a kind of, bling. So green and gold was so bling. But Tokyo has the best shirts, I can say. Sorry.
Thank you, Sharon.
Sorry, Toronto.
Stephanie, what about you?
I would say for the colors, I really like Energy Standard. They stick out. The colors, you can catch them. They're very eye drawing to TV, and you can see them pretty instantly. But I would say probably the best logo. I really like the London Roar logo quite a bit. Um, it's, I don't know, traditional, I guess, for London, so I really like that part. But I did love the jump. So each team had their little, their little thing. But Toronto, I did like the Toronto one as well. So I did really like that concept of like, it brought the team together. So and the whole team being able to do this little thing when they walked out was pretty cool too. So
I agree. The frog hop was absolutely adorable to see. It was a highlight of the meet. But with that being said, Stephanie, Sharon, thank you so much for joining into this podcast. It means a lot both for the ISL and for the fans.
Thank you very much. Amazing.
And to everyone watching, we will have a match analysis happening this Sunday. Please tune in. And our next podcast will happen on Tuesday with actually Tokyo Frog Kings athletes. Tune in for the Tokyo Frog King hop. But with that being said, thank you for joining in, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Stephanie, Sharon, we're no longer live.